You came to us, not for redemption, not because you're impious, but for power. Few seek us out, but you are worthy.
Welcome to the Cabinet Gamers, where we talk about board games, tabletop RPGs, and right now D&D 5e. So we just moved into the new office, so we got a great backdrop. However, we got some pretty hot light coming from a window right there, which we'll have to get fixed, so bear with us on that. This is one of our first of our build videos, videos period, on YouTube. We've been building up content for the last year and a half, and as opposed to trying to get everything right, we're just going to start giving you guys the content. So the build will have a link below, so check it out in the comment, well, right above the comment section. But make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, check us out. We'll have a Patreon page coming up pretty soon. But overall, we've got a ton of information, a ton of resources for you. But today, it's all about the Warlock build. So we focus on levels 1 through 10, and playability running through those levels when it comes to builds. We don't look at those end-user power gamer 20-level builds because most games really occur between levels 5 and really 14 is where they cap out at. Very few games go beyond that, so if you're playing beyond that, more power to you. So, my favorite Warlock build ever, the Iron Man. Let's get right down to it. So if you want to go ahead and download this build, go ahead. It's in the link right below the video. But let's go ahead and talk about like the overall concept of the build, and then we'll just walk through how we did this build, because this is really a 1 through 6 level build. So number one, the concept came from a high AC, durability, up close and in your face blaster character, from melee to really 120 feet, using that Eldritch Blast as max distance. There's a lot of things that went into that creation, but overall it's really about moving in combat, being close, knocking people around, and it really kind of focused on that Iron Man's blaster concept. That was the entire concept behind it. Actually, we're going to write some flavor text for this build because it does fit kind of in our world that we're running right now, so that will be interesting. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But for now, if the name on the final document doesn't actually reflect, that's because we actually added some flavor text to it. So originally this was a heavy AC build using heavy armor, but when we talk about behind the build with my brother, we'll actually go into further detail. But I just want to run through the build right now with you because this is a lot of fun. So number one, it is high AC, temporary hit points, plus a little bit of battlefield control, great utilization on RP, and a ton of utility because of the way that we use the Warlock class. So let's go ahead and jump right into this. So number one, it is going to be Adventures League Legal because it is just one book, the Xanathar's Guide to Everything. So it's fully functionable from the moment you start playing, as long as variant rules are allowed. So let's touch on that real quick. So we're going to start with human variant. We're going to put our points into Con and Charisma. So the two different ability scores if you're choosing, those are our choices because Con, which you'll see why we do that here in a second, obviously hit points, but there's another reason as well. And then Charisma because Warlock is a Charisma class. Overall, we chose Chaotic Good for our alignment just because it does fit the Celestial theme for that Warlock. And skills, we chose Deception. And that Deception comes into just that overall arc of charisma-based character, giving them a lot of charisma-based skills, which you'll see as we go through this. But because we're playing human variant, we chose Crossbow Expert. Now, we're not going to use this much at level 1, but starting at level 2, it really starts to kick off. And that's because that Crossbow Expert, it's the second thing it does. Being within 5 feet of a hostile creature doesn't impose disadvantage on your ranged attack rolls. So that means that we can hit with an Eldritch Blast without taking a disadvantage. So point buy. Most people are using point buy. So strength of 8, it is our dump stat, so it is a -1 bonus. Dex of 14, so we're going to get a +2 on our dex. Con, 15 on the point buy, +1 on the racial, gives us a 16. So that's +3. Int 8. So yes, we are using int as a dump stat, so it's not the true Tony Stark of Iron Man, just due to the fact of role-playing purposes. Wisdom we did bump to a 10, and then Charisma is 16. 15 on the point buy, 1 on the racial, which again is a +3. So stats are Strength 8, Dex 14, Con 16, Int 8, Wisdom 10, and Charisma 16. So overall, we are dumping 2 of our stats. Background, we chose Knight, and we chose History and Persuasion. So the History class, the History in there, we do have a -1, but we do get our proficiency. But the Persuasion, once again, Charisma skill. So now we've got Deception, now we've got Persuasion. Overall, language, your choice, depending on that. But we also wanted that extra 25 gold for buying our equipment, which we'll go into later if equipment buys are allowed. If you're doing Adventures League, then of course you're going to take the standard equipment, but you will have that 25 gold in there, so you'll have to kind of figure out a way to make that work. Now we actually love this one. We chose the variant feature, Retainers, as opposed to Position of Privilege because of the background. So Position of Privilege is normally what comes with background, which is when you're in a city and you're around nobles and knights, people accept you, you're more likable as far as that goes. So that Position of Privilege really goes into the role-playing side. But Retainers, we couldn't pass it up because you have 3 Retainers loyal to your family just to do stuff for you. So it really adds that level of nobility from that background, which is important because of our first level that we choose. So really up to you on that one. The Position of Privilege, if Retainers is not allowed, is what you'll go with. So let's move into class features. So starting with level 1, we're actually going to take Fighter 1, and for a couple of reasons. Number 1, we're going to start off with that 10 points of 10 hit points plus our con modifier, and because our con is 16, we're actually going to roll a 13 at level 1 for hit points. Also, all armors, shields, and shields is really important for this build, but it's the saving throws, strength, and constitution. So not so much the strength, due to the fact that we are dumping that, but that con saving throw proficiency really comes into account when you're trying to deal with some of the concentration spells that we're going to pick for this class later on. We've changed some of those so it's not so much concentration, but it allows for you to have that. Now, skill-wise, this is really where you, and coming in here and choosing this, you get to choose 2 skills. We chose Acrobatics and Intimidation. Because our dex is a 14, we wanted some kind of acrobatic style skills, and then Intimidation obviously worked really well. The other skills that come with Fighter on that in there, Intimidation, Perception, Survival, and Insight. Obviously, any intelligence-based skill we didn't go with, and we really focused on the charisma base. So now we have Intimidation, we have Persuasion, and we have Deception, all of which are the 3 primary charisma-based skills. We have a charisma of 16, which gives us +3, so we have a lot of RP in here available. Insight would have been a good one to choose because I believe Insight is a wisdom spell. Equipment-wise, so if you're stuck choosing standard equipment, chainmail, martial weapon, and a shield, whatever martial weapon you want, I recommend Finesse because of our dex, a light crossbow, 20 bolts, and a Dungeoneer's pack. Now, we chose on the alternative equipment, so we bought equipment, right? So 5d4 times 10 averages to 125 gold plus 25 from the noble background, gives us 150 gold pieces. We went with Scale Mail. Okay, this is AC 14 plus 2 dex, right? So that's one of the reasons why we didn't bump our dex to a step higher, is because we're wearing medium armor, which limits us to only +2 on our dex. So therefore it gives us 16. Shield +2 to AC. Now we take that 16, we bump it to 18. So Rapier, 1d8, Finesse weapon, light crossbow, 20 bolts. Now, we bought the Arcane Focus Crystal already. Since we know we're going into Warlock, we went ahead and bought it as that, and then the Dungeoneer's pack, right? Now, fighting style is the next section here, and we chose defense, which gives us an additional +1 bonus to our AC. So now we've got 14 from our AC from scale, 2 from our dex is 16, 2 from our shield is 18, and now 1 from our defense fighting style, which is now 19 on our AC. That's a fantastic armor class to start out with as a fighter, but it's going to be even better once we move into Warlock. So we also chose second, well, you get second wind, it's not a choice, which is a wonderful way just to give you more hit points. It's just 1d10 plus your fighter level, but I like the fact that it's a bonus action. So this is a great way when you're taking damage, especially later on, to give yourself a little boost of hit points. Super cool and very effective. Actually, later on for the first 5 to 6 levels, it loses its effectiveness once you start getting past level 10. But as a bonus action, just to give yourself a quick 10 hit points, just to polish and top yourself off and keep yourself up and going, depending on the type of campaign you're running, this is great. It also refreshes on a short or long rest. So therefore, because the Warlock is mostly a short rest character, this is just an extra heal that you get to throw in there. Absolutely fantastic for that first level of fighter. So moving on, our second level, this is where we choose Warlock, right? So now mind you, hit points of this are 5 plus your constitution, but we have 3, so that's 8. So even at level 2, we're still rocking, what is that? You got 10, 13, 8, 20, 21. So 21 hit points at level 2. Otherworld Patreon. This is really important. We're actually going to select Celestial. Once again, Xanthai's Guide to Everything. So the Healing Light. This is probably, it really comes online when we hit level 6, and you'll see why. So, but at first level, you gain a pool of dice of d6s that you spend to fuel healing. The number of dice in the pool is 1 plus your Warlock level. So, because of level 1, we get the d10 to heal ourselves. Now, we've got 2d6 to heal ourselves as well. And this is once again as a bonus action, but this can be done on other people as well. But it's still good for self-heal, and so being up and close and in person, you can take this beating, you can take some damage, you've got good hit points at level 2, and you've already got a d10 for healing, and you've got 2d6 for healing, and this one only goes on a long rest is when it gets replenished. So you want to use your second wind first, but this keeps you popped up and off top. And in our campaign, we use a variant of gritty realism, and I'll put our campaign setting out there later once we actually get it flushed out. However, that short rest and that long rest, having ability to do both is super important. Cantrips. So with cantrips, obviously we chose Eldritch Blast. Realistically speaking, we chose Prestidigitation. Create Bonfire is actually the one that was on here. There was a bunch of argument between the two, so most likely this will actually change to Bonfire. And then, of course, Light, because of the fact that it actually comes from being a Celestial, and we also get Sacred Flame as well. Light's very important because we are human, so we don't have dark vision, we don't have any way to see in the dark, and then Sacred Flame, we just get it. Whether we use that or not, I mean, technically speaking, it's on a save as opposed to a hit, so it may come into counter. First level spells, you know, I have to say it, we're going to take Hex, just because that actually boosts our damage. Now, this is one of the things where it does 1d6 necrotic damage. Because we chose Celestial Fiend, it really depends on your DM. We really wanted to reflavor the Hex to actually do radiant damage, but that's really going to dictate based upon whatever your DM says. And then Armor of Agathis, okay? So this is actually a key, and mind you, you're only getting 2 spells per combat per short rest, so you're really going to choose Hex or Armor of Agathis. But the one thing about this is that you gain 5 temporary hit points per level of the spell that it's cast at, and because you're always casting at your max level, this becomes very effective later on. And if they hit you, then they take 5 cold damage. So this is a great way to get in there and want to be hit and not necessarily be upset about it, because you do have second wind, you do have the celestial, oh goodness gracious, what's it called? It always gives me healing light. Because you have those, this really just adds to your survivability. So moving on, let's go to level 3. So level 3, Warlock 2. So this is a pretty simple one, but it gives us our first 2 invocations. So number 1, 5 plus Constitution modifier for hit points, so another 8 hit points. But invocations, Agonizing Blast. Obviously, this adds our Charisma modifier to our damage. So it's an extra 3 damage per hit, which really just adds to that. We had some debate on this one, and we'll go over that later, but Repelling Blast. When you hit a creature with Eldritch Blast, you can push the creature up to 10 feet away from you in a straight line. When you hit level 6, this 10 feet becomes 20 feet. You literally can start pushing people around the battlefield, moving them out of the way so your team can then actually move. And when you push someone out, no attacks of opportunity happens. But if someone gets up close to one of your casters, to your rogue, you literally can hit them, push them away, and allow your team to then reposition themselves. So this gives you a ton of battlefield control, but only one way of doing it. So that's one of the reasons why we didn't rate this build with a huge amount of battlefield control, because you only have really one trick up your sleeve. It's an effective trick, but it's one trick. You also get one additional first level spell. We chose Expeditious Retreat just because it allows you to move so much faster, but it is concentration. So when you cast a spell, you get a bonus action on each of your turns until the spell ends. You can take the dash action. So the ability to move 60 feet, high AC, and push people around allows you to position yourself to really be effective in doing this, or to get in front of things, or to reposition yourself. Really, this is kind of up for debate as far as which one you want to take. There's a lot of room and a lot of great first level spells, but for the purpose of the build, really this character is all about positioning themselves on the battlefield. Level 4 is where this starts getting interesting. So, at 3rd level, you get your other weapon as a gift upon you. We chose Pact of the Chain. And even though we're Celestial, we chose Imp. Now, we're all about reflavoring stuff, and that really depends on your DM, but this is still Adventures League legal. There's nothing says that you can't have an Imp, and be, which is lawful evil, and be chaotic good. Nothing says you can't do that. But there's a couple of reasons why. I'm going to cover this real quick. We can go to it later. Shape Changer. The Imp can use its actions to polymorph into the beast of a rat, raven, spider, or into its devil form. So, remember, you now have a permanent companion that can be a rat, raven, or spider, allowing it to get anywhere. Also has Devil Sight. Magical Darkness does not impede the dark vision. And because you have Pact of the Chain, you can have this thing sit on your shoulder and you can look through its eyes. Now, all of a sudden, you have dark vision, right? Magic resistance, but invisibility. The Imp magically turns invisible until it attacks or until its concentration ends, as if concentrating on a spell. Any equipment the Imp wears or carries is invisible with it. So think about this for a second. Your invisible Imp goes over, flies over, grabs something from the bad guys, and flies back, all while being invisible, to hand you something. Or you could pass things invisibly to your companions. So, because if it picks it up, it becomes invisible. And then it walks over and it hands it to someone else. It now can communicate. It now can go somewhere else and you can talk through it to your people. So there's so many implications to Pact of the Chain, which Mage Hand, right? Same thing as a Mage Hand, except it can lift 45 pounds. And if your Imp dies, you can resummon it. It can also shape change. It can also use the aid action to give you advantage, to give your counterparts in terror advantage as well. So Imp gives you a huge boon to ability, okay? So 2nd level spells wise, Mirror Image is the one that we chose from the 2nd level. It does not require concentration, which we originally had Blur, which did require concentration. So one of those things where, again, depending on this, makes it very difficult, gives you a ton of survivability, especially if you're going into a big battle. So I love it. So level 5. So we hit Warlock 4 here, which is ability score increase. Now, you can go ahead and hit yourself with that charisma modifier, giving yourself a +2, which will take you 16 to 18, which really is an amazing +4 to damage now, plus an additional +1 to hit. It gives you a ton of abilities. However, for the purpose of this build, we chose Inspiring Leader. So if you don't know what this feat is, I'm going to go ahead and read it to you. You can spend 10 minutes inspiring your companions, shoring up the resolve to fight. When you do this, choose up to 6 friendly targets within 30 feet who can see or hear you and can understand you. Each creature gains temporary hit points equal to your level, which is 5, plus your charisma modifier, which is 3, so that's 8 points. A creature can't gain temporary hit points from this feat until it has finished a long or short rest, and you can include yourself. So if you have a party of 5 people, right, including yourself, I'm going to pop that calculator up there just so you can see, because I'm horrible at math. That's 40 additional hit points across the board. That's a lot of life. That's more healing than you can ever do. So that's a huge, huge boon to your survivability. You get an additional cantrip. We chose Poison Spray, just for thematics. And then a second level spell, we chose Shatter, because we're lacking some AoE. So on level 6, this is where, number 1, we get the third level spell. We chose Vampiric Touch. So this is where that concentration comes into account. So if you're out of hit points, you can do Vampiric Touch, and this puppy right here will do 3d6 necrotic damage on hit, and you get half of it back. So it's a great way, because you have a high AC. If your temporary hit points are gone, you're starting to lose, and you don't have any heals, that's a big deal. Also, for invocations, Gift of the Ever-Living One. When your familiars within 100 feet of you treat any dice rolled to determine the hit points you regain as having rolled their maximum value for you. So now, think about that original, what is it called? It's the Celestial's ability. Always gets me. Healing Light, right? We are now Warlock level 5, right? So 5, where's that at? 5 plus 1. So we have 6d6 of healing that, if it's on ourself, is now maximized. That is incredible when it comes to actual just survivability. And we also have that second wind, which now became a 10, and we can use once per short rest. So level 6 is where your survivability really goes through the roof, being able to really maximize the amount of healing that you get, right? So on level 7, Radiant Soul, I'm going to read it because we really wanted to stick with Warlock going beyond this, but there's some other debating as of you can actually dip into, depending on how long your campaign's going to go, whether or not you would actually dip, you can dip into some other categories and other classes to really make this build amazing, but we've chosen to really only stick with 2 when it comes to multi-classing, so we stuck level 7 as also Warlock. Starting at 6th level, you link the Celestial allows you to serve as a conduit for radiant energy. You have resistance to radiant damage, and when you cast a spell that deals radiant or fire damage, you add your charisma modifier to 1 radiant or fire damage roll of that spell against one of its targets. So because we have Agonizing Blast, we're already adding our Charisma modifier to that, so it's iffy. So realistically speaking, this build kind of ends at level 6. We have some ideas for going beyond level 6. However, taking Warlock up beyond that is not necessarily a bad decision. So that's the build in its whole. As you can see, every level that you go up in this build is giving you something, which is super fun. It's not a max DPS build. It's not a max AC build. It doesn't do any specific one thing really well, but it has a great survivability. It's got a great damage dealing. You know, when you hit level 6, yeah, you're doing 2 Eldritch Blasts that are 2d6. You have your imp. If you pop Hex up, now you're doing 2d10, 2d6, and you're adding your Charisma Mire, which is plus 6 at this point because you're firing twice, and you can push someone back 20 feet. So you have a lot of versatility in this class. So it's a lot of fun for you guys to play it. So I hope you like the build. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like. This is our first build video. The next build that's coming out, I believe, is going to be our rogue build. Arcane Trickster Fighter, Archery build, Crossbow Expert. Whole lot of fun. Tons of damage. You get to roll lots of dice on it. But make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. Tell us what you think of the build below. Tell us if you run the build. Let us know what you think of it. And then check out the links below. Our website should be up soon. Our Patreon's coming soon. But overall, I hope you enjoy the build, guys. So thank you, and see you next time.